Practice amp. If your goal is learning songs, improving technique, working on scales, or simply playing without shaking the walls, a practice amp is built for exactly that purpose. These are typically the smallest and most affordable bass amps available, making them the first amplifier many bassists ever own. Popular examples include the Fender Rumble 15, Ampeg Rocket Bass RB108, Orange Crush Bass 25, and Blackstar Utility 30. All of which are frequently recommended to beginners. Most practice amps combine a low wattage amplifier with a compact speaker, usually between 8 and 12 inches. The lower power output allows players to hear their instrument clearly at home, without producing the kind of volume designed for rehearsals or live shows. Many modern models also include headphone outputs, auxiliary inputs, Bluetooth connectivity, and built-in effects, making them useful learning tools as well as amplifiers. For many bassists, a practice amp is the least exciting piece of gear they own. It's also the one that probably gets used the most. Mini amp. Portability is the reason mini amps exist. They're designed for bass players who want amplification they can carry almost anywhere, whether that's a hotel room, a backstage area, a lesson, or a quick practice session before a show. Think of amps like the Pignose, Roland Micro Cube Bass RX, Blackstar Fly Bass, or Positive Grid Spark Go. Historically, bass amplification was anything but portable. Producing low frequencies required large speakers, heavy transformers, and bulky cabinets. As electronics became smaller and more efficient, manufacturers began shrinking entire amplifier systems into compact units that could fit inside a backpack or even a jacket pocket. Most mini amps use small speakers paired with efficient solid-state circuitry. Many now include rechargeable batteries, Bluetooth connectivity, built-in tuners, amp models, effects, and USB recording capabilities. Modern digital processing helps compensate for the limitations of smaller speakers, allowing these amps to produce surprisingly convincing bass tones despite their size. Combo amp. A combo amp keeps everything in one place. The preamp, power amp, and speaker all live inside a single cabinet, making it one of the simplest and most popular forms of bass amplification ever created. One of the earliest examples was the Ampeg Super 800, introduced in 1949. Modern players might be more familiar with amps like the Fender Rumble 500, Ampeg Rocket Bass RB210, or Orange Crush Bass 100, but the basic idea hasn't changed much over the decades. Inside a combo amp, the preamp shapes and boosts the signal coming from the bass. The power amp increases that signal further before sending it to the speaker, where a voice coil and magnet work together to move the cone and create sound. By keeping everything in one enclosure, setup becomes incredibly simple. Plug in your bass, connect power, and you're ready to play. That simplicity is one reason combo amps remain so popular. Of course, there is one downside. The larger and more powerful a combo amp becomes, the heavier it gets. At some point, carrying one starts feeling less like moving music equipment and more like helping a friend move furniture. Amp head. The 1960s pushed bass amplification in new directions. Bands were getting louder, venues were getting bigger, and manufacturers needed a way to deliver more power without cramming everything into a single cabinet. The solution was the amp head, a separate unit containing the amplifier itself while the speakers lived in their own cabinet. Inside an amp head, there are two important sections. The preamp shapes the bass signal through controls such as gain, EQ, compression, and drive. The power amp then boosts that signal and sends it to the speaker cabinet. Separating these components gave players much more flexibility when building a rig. One influential design was the Ampeg B15 Portaflex. By 1960, Jess Oliver's flip-top design allowed the amplifier to be stored safely inside the cabinet during transport. As rock music grew, larger heads from companies like Marshall, Hiwatt, and Vox began appearing on bigger stages. They were often placed on top of speaker cabinets, creating what musicians came to call a stack. A half stack typically combines one amp head with a single cabinet, while a full stack uses an amp head with two cabinets, creating an imposing wall of speakers. Modern bass players may be more familiar with names such as the Ampeg SVT, Aguilar Tone Hammer, Dark Glass Microtubes 900, or Galen Kruger Legacy Series. But but the basic idea remains the same, whether it's a traditional tube head or a modern solid-state design. The biggest advantage is flexibility. The same head can be paired with different cabinets depending on the venue, style, or volume required, allowing musicians to build a rig that fits the job. Speaker cabinet. Take away the speaker cabinet and even the most powerful bass amp becomes surprisingly quiet. That's because the cabinet is responsible for tuning the amplifier's electrical signal into actual sound. No matter how expensive the bass or amp may be, the cabinet plays a huge role in shaping what reaches the audience. Two players can use the same amplifier and still end up with noticeably different tones simply by using different cabinets. Inside every cabinet are one or more speakers, often called drivers. Each contains a cone, voice coil, and magnet. As electrical current passes through the voice coil, it interacts with the magnetic field and causes the cone to move back and forth. That movement pushes air, creating the sound waves we hear as bass. Cabinets come in many configurations. 10-inch speakers are often valued for their clarity and articulation, while 12-inch speakers tend to balance punch and warmth. 15-inch speakers are commonly associated with a deeper, fuller low end. Although cabinet design plays a major role in the final sound regardless of speaker size, bassists also combine speakers into larger configurations such as 2x10, 4x10, 2x12, 1x15, and the legendary 8x10 cabinet often associated with Ampeg rigs. The cabinet itself matters just as much as the speakers inside it. Wood type, ports, internal bracing, and overall construction all influence the final sound. That's why experienced bassists rarely judge a cabinet by size alone. Tube amp. For decades, if you walked into a studio, club, or concert hall, chances are the amplifier glowing in the corner was powered by tubes. Long before transistors became common, vacuum tubes handled nearly all amplification duties. These glass components amplify electrical signals by controlling the flow of electrons inside a sealed vacuum. The technology may seem old-fashioned by modern standards, but it helped create some of the most influential bass sounds ever recorded. The tube era produced several legendary amplifiers. One of the most important was Fender's Bassman, introduced in 1952. Although designed for bass players, it became so influential that it helped inspire some of the most famous guitar amplifiers ever built, including early Marshall designs. Another giant was the Ampeg SVT, introduced in 1969. Its enormous power output made it a favorite for large venues and touring musicians who needed volume without sacrificing character. Much of the appeal comes from the way tube circuits respond to a player's touch. As the signal approaches the limits of the tubes, it compresses naturally and produces harmonic overtones that many describe as warm, rich, and musical. Play softly and the sound remains clean. Dig in harder and the amp responds with greater intensity. Tube amplifiers are heavier, run hotter, and require more maintenance than many modern designs. Even so, their unique feel and sound continue to earn them a place on stages and in studios around the world. Solid-state amp. By the late 1960s, amplifier manufacturers were looking for a practical alternative to vacuum tubes. Tubes sounded great, but they were fragile, generated heat, required maintenance, and added considerable weight to an amplifier. The solution arrived in the form of transistors, small semiconductor devices capable of amplifying electrical signals without relying on glass tubes. That change allowed engineers to build amplifiers that were lighter, more reliable, and easier to maintain. Those advantages appealed to many musicians, especially working bassists who often prioritized clean headroom, dependable performance, and equipment that could handle regular travel without the maintenance demands of tube amplifiers. Unlike tube circuits, which naturally color the signal as they approach their limits, solid-state amplifiers became known for clarity, consistency, and abundant clean power. That made them particularly useful for bass, where strong low-end production and clean volume were often more important than amplifier distortion. Companies such as Galen-Kruger, Peavey, Hartke, and later Mark Bass helped establish solid-state amplification as a major force in the bass world. Many players appreciated being able to show up to a gig without wondering whether a tube had decided to retire halfway through the set. The technology also opened the door to smaller, more affordable amplifiers, making bass amplification accessible to a wider range of musicians. While tube amps continued to have devoted fans, solid-state designs earned their place by solving real-world problems and proving that reliability can be just as valuable as tone. Hybrid amp. The tube versus solid-state debate has been going on for decades, but some manufacturers decided there was no reason to choose sides. Rather than choosing one technology over the other, they combined both inside the same amplifier. The result became known as the hybrid amp, Most designs use a tube preamp paired with a solid-state power section. The tube handles much of the tone shaping, while the solid-state section provides the volume, efficiency, and reliability needed for modern performance. Manufacturers were responding to a challenge that had followed bass amplification for years. Many musicians loved the warmth and responsiveness associated with tube circuits, but weren't always enthusiastic about the weight, heat, cost, and maintenance that came with a fully tube-powered amplifier. By placing a tube at the front end of the signal chain and letting transistors handle the heavy lifting, engineers found a practical compromise. Several well-known bass amplifiers adopted this approach. The Hardkey HA3500 became one of the most recognizable hybrid bass amps ever produced, while models such as the Galen-Kruger Fusion series, Aguilar DB751, and Fender Bassman Hybrid continued to build on the concept. Gigging musicians gravitated toward hybrid amps because they offered a balance of character and practicality. Players could enjoy some of the warmth associated with tube circuits while benefiting from the reliability and efficiency of solid-state technology, making hybrid amps a natural fit for stages, studios, and rehearsal spaces alike. Class D amp. So far, we've looked at amplifiers based on the components inside them, whether that's tubes, transistors, or a combination of both. Class D is different. Instead of describing what's inside the amp, it refers to how the amplifier delivers power. The technology behind Class D amplification actually goes back much further than many people realize. British engineer Alec Reeves developed the concept during the 1950s, although it would take decades before the technology matured enough for widespread use in musical instruments. Class D amplifiers work by rapidly switching transistors on and off thousands of times per second. Because those components spend very little time operating between states, far less energy is wasted as heat. The result is an amplifier capable of delivering impressive power from remarkably compact hardware. For years, powerful bass rigs were expected to be large, heavy, and difficult to move. If an amplifier produced serious wattage, chances were it also required serious lifting. As the technology improved, companies such as Mark Bass, TC Electronic, Trace Elliott, Dark Glass, and Aguilar demonstrated what these lightweight designs could do. Many modern Class D heads can deliver hundreds of watts while fitting inside a gig bag. The biggest surprise wasn't the size, it was the power. For bass players raised on massive rigs, a tiny amplifier producing that much volume felt a little suspicious, like somebody had hidden the rest of the amp somewhere else. Modeling amp. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, digital technology had become powerful enough to tackle one of the biggest challenges in amplification, recreating the sound of multiple amplifiers inside a single unit. The result was the modeling amp. Instead of relying on a single circuit design, modeling amps use digital processing to emulate the characteristics of different amplifiers, speaker cabinets, microphones, and effects. A player can move from the sound of a vintage tube amp to modern high-powered rigs without changing equipment. The idea quickly appealed to musicians who needed flexibility. Carrying several amplifiers to rehearsals, studio sessions, or live performances was expensive and impractical. A modeling amp offered access to a wide range of sounds for one device. Many models also included built-in effects such as compression, chorus, delay, reverb, and distortion. Companies like Line 6 helped bring amp modeling into the mainstream, while later systems from Kemper, Fractal Audio, Neural DSP, and Boss pushed the technology even further. For bass players, modeling amps provide versatility, convenience, and a huge library of tones, making them one of the most significant developments in modern amplification. Preamp DI. Not every piece of bass gear is designed to make things louder. Some are designed to improve the signal before it ever reaches an amplifier. That's where preamps and DI boxes come in. A preamp shapes the bass signal through controls such as EQ, gain, compression, and drive. Many bassists use standalone preamps to fine-tune their tone before sending it to an amp, recording interface, or mixing console. A DI, short for direct injection, serves a different purpose. It converts the bass signal into a balanced signal that can travel long distances with less noise and interference. This allows a bass to connect directly to a mixing board or recording system without relying on a traditional amplifier. Devices such as the Tech 21 SansAmp Bass Driver DI help popularize the combination of both functions in a single unit. Whether on stage or in the studio, preamp and DI units have become essential tools for bassists who want greater control over their sound. Acoustic bass amp. They're designed specifically for acoustic bass guitars, which produce a different tonal character than solid-body electric basses. The goal is not just volume, but preserving the natural sound of the instrument. Most acoustic basses use piezo pickups, which capture vibrations from the bridge rather than magnetic pickups. Because piezo systems emphasize different frequencies, these amps are voiced to reproduce warmth, detail, and resonance more accurately. Many also include features such as anti-feedback controls, notch filters, and microphone inputs, making them useful for solo performers and small acoustic ensembles. As unplugged performance grew in popularity during the late 20th century, manufacturers began developing amplifiers tailored to acoustic instruments. Companies such as Fishman, AER, and Fender became well known for their acoustic amplification systems. While they are not designed to compete with large bass stacks on loud stages, acoustic bass amps excel in smaller venues, coffee houses, and studio settings. Their focus on clarity and natural tone helps preserve the character of the instrument, allowing listeners to hear the wood, resonance, and dynamics that make acoustic basses unique.